Welcome back, everybody. Today we're discussing Watchmen, Season 1, Episode 9, See How They Fly. This was the season finale and potentially the series finale. It was an award-winning experience, undoubtedly, but showrunner Damon Lindelof has spoken multiple times since that final moment, stating outright that he's down for more, but only if he can create as good of a story as this was. My thoughts are conflicted. I want more. I want more so incredibly bad, but I also want to honor what was an incredible single-season story that could end here and be all it ever needs to be. It was truly one of the best of the decade, and HBO should not try to milk this for everything that it's worth and depreciate what was an amazing storytelling experience. Before we get into this video, I do want to thank everybody. The growth on this channel has been incredible, and I'm truly blessed to be able to talk with all of you. I also want to announce that starting today, my personal science fiction novel titled Cyclic will be free on Amazon for 1 week straight. Till next Friday, you can get the ebook version of this novel completely free. Enjoy it as my thank you for being here. Read it over the holidays. Let me know what you think. I'd love to one day be discussing my own television show with all of you, and so far the reviews on this first story have been really good. But without further ado, let's talk about Squidfall, blue penises, and eggs for potentially the last time ever. The episode begins with Adrian Veidt making the video to Robert Redford in 1985. It shows an entire team making this video happen, and the staff working the grounds of Karnak, the stronghold that he had in Antarctica. He discusses the plan to drop the giant squid and writes another one of his self-aggrandizing speeches that lead us into his genes being stolen. We meet Bian, the original one, who enters Ramsey II into a clear text password field and opens his personal spell-barred seed vault. It's hanging behind the Alexander the Great artwork, who we later learn inspired Veidt to jerk off and store in excess of 2,346 vials of baby juice. Anyway, Bian doesn't want to be a slave and likely resents Ozymandias for his role in Vietnam, probably even more now that she's seeing the behind the scenes of this squid attack, hating him for his ability to kill without considering the innocent lives at risk. Next, we come to Veidt, meeting the pesky daughter of his, only entering once she manipulates him by stroking his ego that calls out for validation in saving humanity. It's funny, throughout this entire episode, we slowly, and I guess we've always kind of known, but we more so are reminded that he wants to be known for saving the world. He craves this validation, but when he finally does good at the very end, it's the fact that Lori is now arresting him that will make the world aware of what he did originally. In the end, he killed 3 million people, plus however many died between then and now, and can only really argue that he saved the world twice now. But nevertheless, he gets what he so narcissistically desired, the world knowing about his actions. Veidt and True discuss being the smartest man and woman in the world, and how Redford says that he would have won the presidency even without his help, which is odd. It means that Redford has this tape of Veidt confessing his entire plan and doesn't believe it, or has agreed not to go after Veidt in fear that it would also incriminate him. You know, which is interesting as well when you think about the present timeline and the fact that Redford is still in the presidency. They discuss the Squidfall, a completely automated system with a random number generator deciding where they fall on Earth, explaining why it kept going while Veidt was away. True calls him a rerun in more words than that, and states explicitly her plan is to remove all nukes from the world. She then calls him a wrinkly old loser in more words than that, and that she could do better with the powers of Dr. Manhattan. Something we theorized in the previous video was True's involvement in the recorded Manhattan on Mars. She all but outright admits that it was her doing, because moments ago he tells her that he randomizes the Squidfall to prevent people from figuring it out. Then she tells him that the random actions on Mars were to deter people from finding that pattern, kind of hinting like father, like daughter. Now, True's purpose here is to ask for money. She eventually gets declined, but from her discovery of Manhattan and the laundry list of achievements that she lists when giving the speech at the Millennium Clock, she has been making some kind of good money. You know, I guess not enough to create a god-killing device to siphon his power to her, but some kind of good money. I bring this up because I wonder if she needed this money at all, or just wanted the chance for her dad to validate her. True then reveals to him that she is his daughter, and the good old steal and squirt plan of her mother's all those years ago. It's not clear why he stored it, or why so much of it. It's likely something to do with this idea of his narcissistic tendencies and the worth of his genes, what they could actually do for humanity. Showcased maybe perfectly in the genius that was handed down to True. Also highlighted in maybe the fact that the vial had 2, 3, 4, 6 listed, 23 chromosomes provided by each parent with a total of 46 for the child to be created from. The scene ends with Veidt claiming that he would never call her daughter, and us arriving on Europa. Now, we arrive on the 8th year and learn this entire thing with the game warden, the trial, his escape. All of it was just a part of the play that he was typing at the very beginning. He wrote this entire thing just to pass the time before he would eventually be rescued, explaining how he knew that he would one day need this horseshoe. Also, looking back, you can see how it was highlighted that this place went from a paradise to a prison before the creep of loneliness and sequential insanity sets in. When he's designing the play, he's naked, enjoying life, like I think most people would in this personal heaven. Being naked all the time, doing whatever you want, and having maids and butlers tend to your every need. Then, at some point it turns, and the wonder wears off, all winding down to him being in prison, which oddly enough is how things are looking back home once it's in the present timeline. The bullet catch was a callback from the comics, and the freeze frame here, I'm stating outright that it was a fake bullet and done just like everything else for the theatrics of it. It's funny when you go back and watch all of this now knowing it's scripted, that the importance of him yelling at her to get the lines right early on, was just so his immersion wasn't ruined. He's writing all of these people asking him to stay, calling him master, the trial, and even when Dr. Manhattan leaves, we're led to believe the game warden was hurt from their god leaving. We now know that it was just because he wanted an adversary to pass the time with, and that sounded like a great backstory to Veidt. The whole thing was quite grand, and I am quite pleased at how well it was told. Under the surface, it was a bored, old man wanting to find purpose in life once again, while falling to the depths of his self and insanity until finally breaking down and asking his illegitimate daughter for help. Excellent storytelling. We then learned that it was him and the golden statue the entire time, so good job everyone who had the carbonite Veidt theory. We also get the save me daughter image as he leaves. The importance of spelling that instead of true was of course because he swore that he would never call her daughter. Though, like everything else in his life, he probably did it for the theatrics and doesn't, definitively mean that. Luckily for True, once he lands, she is just as cruel as her father and mocks him, calling him dad. Or maybe not, people like to be acknowledged, so, and in this family, they definitely like that validation, so, it's really left for your interpretation here. I think that they're both being manipulative when they speak sweetly to each other. She even tells him that he was brought back solely to watch her achieve everything, having started from nothing. They get to the location of the event, and True gets a stack of newspapers for something she calls the time capsule. It's not abundantly clear and is really cryptic about what this is, but she's been picking up papers every day since the beginning. If I'm not mistaken, this is the first time we hear the reason, but it's glossed over as side dialogue to Beyond. My guess is that it relates to memories, or documenting the world, getting an accurate picture of what the world looked like by archiving stories from multiple sources in case things go south. Veidt then talks to the newspaper man and gets told that most people don't care about Veidt anymore, that he's a character, that he's a novelty the world no longer concerns themselves with, which is pretty rough for anyone to hear, let alone this guy. Next, we come to the Millennium Clock, which is just a floating quantum centrifuge that needed to be floating for some fucking reason that's not apparent to me. The only reason I think is that it looks more ominous. True looks more villainous because of this thing, which I kind of fault the show for, because they could have just teleported the people to the base of the clock and done all of this here. This leads to my biggest issue that I have with the finale, and that's Lady True being the true villain and lacking the dialogue providing why she wouldn't be a better Dr. Manhattan. Even when Veidt starts talking about the end of the world in cryptic text here, it's because it's explicitly letting the audience know that this hovering ball is bad and we should fear it, because Veidt fears it. It's not at all a bad scene, and we predicted that True would be the true bad guy in all of this, but I really question if the show did enough showing how she would be a bad Dr. Manhattan if they ended all of this with Will telling Angela that Dr. Manhattan could have done more with his powers. You know, if that was the goal for everybody and she killed the racists that were trying to do the same and only claims about the good things that she would have done without anyone else rebuting her, why couldn't she have been a better Manhattan and done better for the world? Now, the show does very subtly tell us throughout that she wouldn't have done good for the world. And the biggest way is when they introduce the dynamic of father-daughter and we're made to realize how much like her father she is. But again, that's very subtle. But without a single dedicated episode to True and her family, maybe better showcasing a hatred for America or how power would corrupt her or something like that, on the surface, I have little reason to believe that she wouldn't have been a better Blue God. You know, even like, again, Will says that he could have done more. Why couldn't she have done more? I'm going off track, but that's my one issue with this season, and I've said my piece. Next, we come to the 7K hideout, and Wade hiding behind the Rorschach mask. They teleport Dr. Manhattan in. Laurie calls out for John. I really wish we would have gotten a moment between these two characters as well, because of their past, but they transition to Angela breaking fingers until they confess where the hideout is. The brutality of this was honestly great. It felt so in character, so urgent. I mean, breaking fingers was also a favorite of the original Rorschach, so it's poetic in that way too. Next, we come to Senator Keene talking about his hatred for Ozymandias and Robert Redford, who has made white people's lives difficult in America. Going over again their original plan and how during the White Night, one of the guys was teleported to New Mexico, letting them know that Dr. Manhattan was still very much around. Jane and Judd Crawford were tasked with getting close to the family, which is why they were all buddy-buddy in the very beginning, to excellent results. I truly believe the chemistry in this friendship. The cage that was built to contain him was created out of synthetic lithium, which explains what the 7K were doing in episode 1 at the ranch. It also means that whenever Judd kills the 7K members, he's killing his own team, but doing it to keep this secret plan secret and preserve his high standing in the police. We learned Laurie was invited down not to bait Dr. Manhattan here, but to watch him die. And that was the extent of it, which is an odd choice. And it also makes me wish again that they would have gotten some kind of dialogue between Laurie and Dr. Manhattan, because like they said, you know, they used to be lovers. He would equally be feeling those emotions in those final moments as well. Or maybe not, but I think he would. Angela enters the scene and we confirm our theory about them stealing these batteries and the fact that True let it happen. During this scene, we really start seeing the power-hungry Keene come out, even calls her a black bitch, and we're all like, oh, fuck, you know, fuck this guy, man. And it works, you know, like it shows that we know that this power will corrupt him and he would be no good as a Blue God. However, and again, we don't get an equivalent moment from True. You know, she should have had that similar snap, and it was just like, oh, you know, she's bad news. Senator Keene enters the chamber, Wade stands guard of Laurie, and boom, they all get teleported to the middle of town. People start throwing up from the teleportation, and the guns get sucked away. True reveals that her and Will made this plan, but more accurately, Dr. Manhattan made this plan. She opens the chamber, and Senator Keene juice pours out. It was a nice twist and a oh shit moment, and it was really well done. It was also a nice twist in, you know, the sense that moments before, Senator Keene just referred to squeezing Angela's husband like a grape, and, you know, now he was just popped. True starts giving a speech to the Cyclops board, and Jane demands for her to hurry up, or just get it over with. Again, I would have liked one thing thrown in here to remind us that she isn't the good guy right now, because she's actively killing racist people, which is good. So I don't see this as evil. The word choice from Will in the letter is also interesting. You know, he writes that they represent the senior leadership of Cyclops, not you are the senior leadership of Cyclops, meaning that others undoubtedly exist. And if season 2 does happen, they could make an appearance in some capacity. I would have liked to see the mesmerism also make an appearance in this scene. Like instead of laser zapping, it would have made them kill each other like they tried to do to the black community all those years ago. I think that that would have been some really nice Poetic justice. Manhattan zaps Wade, Lori, and Veidt back to Karnak. They are now tasked with saving the day, and True starts yelling about him sending her father away. This would have also been a good time to do something drastic. The little pout to Beyond here just kind of made me laugh. You know, she's becoming frustrated, out of her comfort zone, which is a new insight to her character, but still not acting evilly. She believes that she can save the world with his powers, while he allows millions to die from starvation and hunger, fear of nukes, etc. She still acts with humanity's interests being her end goal. You know, I believe that she wholeheartedly believes that. I think if they would have had her shoot Angela or something unnecessary to show that she was acting evilly, it would have made a hell of a point. Like, shoot Angela out of spite, taking her from Dr. Manhattan's final moments, just as he just took her father from her starting moments. I think that would have been really amazing. Overall, I loved all of this. Like, again, I'm maybe being more critical than I've ever been about this show, but I loved it. When he said that he didn't want to be alone when he died, man, I teared up. It was so good. The acting, the score, the pause when they look at each other, man, I mean, it was honestly incredible. The final flashback when he sees his life with Angela, I was no good. And then he was gone. The death of Dr. Manhattan. Stunning. We then see the Karnak team save the day with frozen squid falling so fast they become a Gatling gun. I was expecting more from Wade in this scene, if I'm being honest. I like that he was helping. Literally, the person we see most affected by this place is now using it for good, being behind the scenes instead of a viewer to someone else's show. That was cool, but I hoped that he would have like shot Senator Keene or Veidt or somebody more. I don't know. The plan is to destroy the floating meatball, and it works. We also get in the scene dialogue between Wade and Veidt about why she wouldn't be a good Dr. Manhattan. And basically he says, because she's my kid. He sees the worst of himself in her, and that makes sense. You wanting to be a god is enough reasons for you not to be given those powers. It's narcissism incarnate that would only explode once you became a literal god. When the squid pierced her hand, it was a pretty gnarly moment. That was also well done. But she closes her eyes in the face of death, doesn't flee or cower, which is interesting if you consider that safety was just a short dash away. I believe it's because, like the time capsule newspaper thing, she still has stuff going on. I think that there's a strong case that she could have an elephant with all of her memories and stuff recorded there, and Beyond just needs to print another body of her and start going through the treatment that Beyond was going through this entire season. In theory, it's essentially immortality. I said this in a previous video, and there was some debate in the comments because, you know, fidelity, but if you could print a new body and transfer memories and personality before you passed away, you could, in theory, live forever. So yeah, Beyond lives through this entire thing. And that equally could be a scary thing because she's just a little girl now, but it was also her that so vindictively started this entire thing with the theft of Veidt's spunk. I could see a future where she returns, and maybe it's her or her actions becoming the main issue of the season. We get a touching moment between Will and Angela about his origin story and how masks prevent you from healing. That they wore those masks because they were angry or afraid, but ultimately because they were hurt, they were damaged and needed to be repaired, but wouldn't get that way as long as they wore a mask. So I think two things happen from this scene. The story of Hooded Justice is now complete, and the story of Sister Night. I don't see her putting this mask back on. With everything that happened and what happens at the end of the episode, I think Sister Night is yesterday's news. This also symbolizes the reunion of her family, and that is really nice as well. One last scene on Karnak. Veidt gets arrested and they find Archie, Night Owl's handy-dandy flying machine. Now, the family walks from the Dreamland Theater with only the letters DR and M still working, clearly telling us Dr. Manhattan, which foreshadows the next moments when Angela eats the egg and potentially becomes Dr. Manhattan. However, because we don't find out, it still leaves on the table that Topher could become him one day instead. And wouldn't you know it, the letters highlight him in this scene the most. I undoubtedly 100% believe that Angela eats this and becomes the next Dr. Manhattan. The force in which she tossed this down, these would have all been broken. It was definitely placed there, and if it was placed there, it would be placed there only for one reason. It also has the same mark on it that it had in the bar when he describes the transfer. It's left up to the audience, though. So literally no wrong answer. It is in the state where it will never be answered. So it's whatever your headcanon says. In my opinion, though, it would make no sense to develop all of this consent stuff, the power transfer things, his final moments with her involving cooking, breakfast, etc., if it didn't lead to this moment. It would all be worthless information and filler that we didn't need, and I refuse to believe that that's what it is. Meaning the end of Sister Night is the origin story of something far greater, someone who could potentially use these powers for good. The show ends with I am the walrus, and the biggest mystery of all, what happened to Lube Man? Well, they didn't wrap his story here, so Crimebusters 2.0, here we come, but if you checked out PDpedia, we would learn that he was fired from the FBI for refusing to come back to Washington. So, we will undoubtedly see this slippery little snake if another season of this glorious show is created. But until the showrunners say otherwise, I am happy with one season, and we'll just have to imagine what tomfoolery PD is getting into. Thank you all so much for watching, and please be sure to subscribe for more TV shows and theory breakdowns in the future. If you haven't yet, check out my Patreon, and please give a special thank you to everyone donating there. Chris Cole, Robert Holtz, and Micheal Linck, you're all amazing. Also, if you haven't checked out my novel Cyclic, be sure to download it for free on Amazon today. Thank you guys so much. Thank you for being here, sharing this awesome season of the show with me. Much love, everybody, and I can't wait to talk to you all again soon.